Hey, welcome back. I'd like to take you along today on a flight I did recently with a young woman named Rochelle. Rochelle is a very talented pilot. She is also a certificated flight instructor. She flies charter for a Part 135 operation in larger equipment. She owns a Cessna 210, and the task for the day was a checkout in a lowly Cessna 152. Now, how challenging can that be? Well, you never can tell what's going to happen. We had a really solid plan for the day. We did the walk around together. We briefed the flight. We knew everything that was going to happen, and the weather was fantastic. Just beautiful, cloudless sky, calm air mass, just stable as could be. Everything's perfect until it's not. Why don't you follow along on this flight as if you were a backseat passenger and see if you can pick out what's going wrong.
What do you want to do now, boss?
Let's do a little bit of slow flight.
I was about to guess that. I like it. And one of the things I like about slow flight, you're getting down into that slow speed regime where the controls get a little sloppier, power is a little higher, and it really does force you to control the airplane in a thoughtful manner.
Right.
Where rudder is king and ailerons are pretty useless.
Right. So we're reducing our power. We are in flap operating range.
And remember, when you get below green arc in a Cessna, go with carb heat. Vipers don't ask for that. It's the same engine, but for whatever reason, they don't care.
Papa traffic, Archer 777 Echo Sierra is...
There's 60 on the knots, 55. We're using power to maintain our altitude.
Rochelle is having some difficulty holding her attitude and altitude while she's entering slow flight. Have you picked up what the problem is yet?
Traffic, problem. Winter Haven traffic, 14.
This maneuver has changed a lot since I started. When I got into this, oh, check out your flaps. They're moving.
They are moving. Why are they moving?
I love Rochelle's reaction to this issue. She recognizes that something's wrong. She figures out what it is. The flaps are moving up and down. They're oscillating through several degrees of travel uncommanded, and she has to correct that. This is great pilot thinking. If you're going along that process where it's like, what is the problem? What's causing the problem? And what can I do about it? You're on the right path. And Rochelle absolutely is. She handled this so well. What would you do in this exact situation?
There's an issue with that flap switch apparently because they're oscillating a few degrees.
Right, and even this is oscillating.
And I mentioned it because if the flaps are oscillating, there's no way you're going to hold an attitude and an airspeed.
Right.
This causes us to think about a number of things as we're flying and managing the airplane. Can I continue with my flight? How serious an issue is this? Is this something that I really should terminate the flight and go back to the airport for? Could I continue my flight? Am I okay? I just have a minor inconvenience to deal with. Or is this a more serious issue where I should look for the closest airport and get myself on the ground and get this thing into maintenance? Or even worse, do I have something like a fire going on or a structural issue where I need to put this down right here, right now? Just one of the reasons my practice area has a lot of open fields, a place to go if you need to. All these things are running through Rochelle's head while she's trying to fly the airplane. She's doing a great job.
So let's do slow flight with no flaps. And that's going to be a squawk that goes into our list.
All right, so I've lost a little bit of altitude, so I'm going to increase my power and get my altitude back. Maintaining an eastbound heading. I know there's a Bravo on that side out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's a ways off, though.
6,000 feet.
Yeah, 27 is really our barrier that way, Highway 27.
Okay.
So we would see that well before we get there.
So as you can see, Rochelle and I continued on the flight. Very successfully, I think. But some people have suggested we should have gone home right away. We should have gotten the airplane on the ground. To which I ask, why? If the airplane's flying safely, if we don't have a problem, if we can work around the issue we do have, I don't think you have to terminate the flight right now because of the failure of a secondary flight control. But that's my opinion. Tell me what you think down in the comments.
Shell, you're doing beautifully. This is very stable. Slowly getting your altitude back, under control. You're right at 60. By the way, 60 is best glide in this as well.
Top traffic, Archer 777 Echo Sierra is going around. Top traffic.
I like the way, by the way, you reacted to an issue, and as I said, I don't use flaps very much. So I just saw them out of the corner of my eye moving, and I figured you're probably struggling, figuring why is this not working?
Well, I was losing altitude and...
But the ability to recognize that you've got an issue and deal with it, and like, okay, we don't have to freak out, it's not what I want, but we can still do slow flight, we can still demonstrate the ability. Now, what if you transition from this into a power-off stall? How would you go about that?
Well, I'm not going to use my flaps.
Wise.
So I would reduce my power, I'd start at descent rate, and then I would increase as though I were flaring.
Okay.
Increase my pitch.
Okay.
You have a recommended...
Because I'm an old guy and I don't take on primary students too much, I still do it the way we did when I started. I pitch to maintain altitude as I reduce power, and it's just going to stall. So I just do the recovery from there. I don't allow the descent to happen.
Okay.
But you do it your way. I'm fine.
To the 45 runway 5, Winter Haven.
And I often pick a cloud to look at when my nose is this high, because then I can keep directional control, and no big deal. Look at you go. You're down at 35 on the airspeed indicator.
There's the horn. That's the first indication. Reduce the nose, increase the power, maintain the positive BSI. In there. We'd start taking out flaps if we were utilizing flaps.
Now, admittedly, some folks would have terminated the flight and gone home, and I have nothing against that. If that's your comfort level, that's a good decision. Rochelle and I stayed out in the practice area. We continued with slow flight. We got into power off stalls, and it led to a discussion about something that correlates to those maneuvers that should be just a benign, everyday thing, and frankly, every pilot will have to do this particular maneuver, but unfortunately not everyone practices it, and when it happens in the real world, they overreact, and it becomes a real tragedy instead of just a very minor inconvenience. See what you think.
One of the things people do a lot, and they do this in go-rounds and screw themselves up and crash. They try and go from that stall or that pitch down with low power to pitch up with high power. And that transition is so much. There's so much going on in terms of physics. I like to just come back to level flight. You know, the nose drops, come back to level flight, bring up the power, build up a little speed, then slowly bring the altitude back. And, you know, my worry is to arrest the descent, not to get the altitude back. That happens later. You want to try some pattern work?
Sure.
Okay.
So now we've finished all our air work out in the practice area. We've done our slow flight, our stalls, our steep turns. Rochelle's really got a handle on the airplane. We've even dealt with an in-flight issue. Everything's going fine, so now it's time to go home. Which brings up a question that has vexed every flight student throughout history and pretty much every pilot flying into an unfamiliar airport. Where is that airport anyway? Now we can look out the window, my preferred form of navigation. I really like the V in VFR, or we could dial in a VOR or use our GPS to get us there. Whatever works, works. Just pick something, and Rochelle did.
All right, Winter Haven's over there somewhere.
It's probably still there.
Yeah, I would imagine. I can use my technology. I've done a lot of seaplane work in that lake right there, Lake Maddie.
I didn't know you had a seaplane rating. Woo! That's my favorite thing.
It is so much fun.
This turned into a very productive, really successful flight. Just because something unusual happened didn't mean we had to terminate. In fact, it allowed us to get a little deeper into something that wouldn't have happened if the flaps had worked the way they were supposed to. Now the aircraft's in maintenance, it's getting the flap situation fixed, everything's going along just beautifully, and life is good. I hope you have just as much fun when you're out flying, and I hope if you ever have an incident, some kind of an issue that you're not quite sure of, you understand how to use that thought process. What's wrong? Why is it wrong? What can I do about it? And how serious is this? Thanks so much for coming by. I look forward to seeing you next time right here on MadPropsAero.